Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
The invitation wasn't even addressed to me. It showed up in the pile of mail Tina dropped on my desk that morning, right between a marketing firm's latest pitch and a pink envelope from some overpriced spa we never had time to visit. The cream cardstock was heavy in my hands, that obnoxious thick kind that screams money for no reason. The handwriting was Samantha's, too perfect to be real, like the way she always smiled with her teeth, but never her eyes. Inside was a gilded invite. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Samantha Langford and Michael Whitmore. I read it twice, then flipped it over and saw a note scribbled in ballpoint pen. Oops, wrong Rachel. Meant for Aunt Rachel. Ignore this, haha. Ignore this, haha. Tina looked over my shoulder and winced like she'd bit down on a rotten tooth. Jesus, she muttered, pulling a chair beside me. You okay? I wasn't. But I wasn't about to show it. Not anymore. See, this wasn't the first time my family had accidentally left me out. It wasn't even the fifth. This was just the first time they put it in writing and sealed it with gold foil. I stared at my brother's name like it belonged to someone I used to know. The boy who once built me a treehouse out of scraps. The same kid who cried when I left for college. But that boy had vanished somewhere between his second app launch and his first custom suit. It wasn't just the invite. That came later. That afternoon, I dropped by Mom's place because her air conditioner had died again, and her boyfriend was too busy with golf to fix it. I figured I'd do what I always did, save the day without being asked. But while I was fidgeting with the circuit box in the hallway, I heard it. Her phone rang, and she let it go to voicemail. Loud, because she hadn't learned how to silence anything since the Clinton administration. The voice was unmistakable, my brother, cheerful and smug. Hey Mom, just wanted to confirm the guest list. Samantha says everything looks great. Also, can we make sure Rachel doesn't get the invite? Not to be rude or anything, but we don't want pity gifts from the broke one. You know how she is. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the fuse panel like it had slapped me in the face. The broke one. Not your sister. Not Rachel. Just the broke one. Like I was a joke in their little sitcom. Like I didn't run two companies. Like I hadn't paid off Mom's mortgage while Michael was too busy sailing off the coast of Santorini to remember her birthday. When Mom came into the hallway, she smiled like nothing had happened. Want iced tea? She asked, cheerful as ever. I said no thanks. Then I walked out without a word. The heat outside was brutal, and I felt every degree of it like a curse pressed against my skin. But inside, something colder was spreading. I wasn't mad, not in the way people expect. I wasn't even surprised. I was just done. Tina was waiting in the car. She looked at me and didn't ask a single question, just handed me my tablet and said, "You've got the Henderson call in 20. I nodded and dialed in. 3 hours later, we closed it. The Henderson deal. $50 million. 30 acres of prime, mixed-use development in upstate New York. We beat out 2 national firms. I did it while my family drank champagne and talked about floral arrangements. No one in my family knew. And I didn't tell them. Because I'd realized something that afternoon. When people decide you're nothing, it doesn't matter how much you achieve. They won't change the script unless you burn the whole theater down. And I was ready to strike the match. By 9 that night, I was curled up on the couch in my apartment, drinking scotch I'd saved for something worth celebrating. Tina had gone home, and the lights of the city stretched out like a million tiny exits I could finally afford to take. My phone buzzed, and I checked the notification. A group text from Samantha. The photo was filtered to death, her and Michael clinking glasses under a chandelier big enough to land a helicopter on. My parents grinned in the background, like they hadn't raised 2 kids, just one golden prince and a ghost. Wish you were here. The caption read. I stared at it for a long minute. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. But I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop. And I started planning. Because if they didn't want my pity, they sure as hell weren't ready for my power. There's a difference between being ignored and being erased, and I think I figured that out before I even knew what either word really meant. I must have been around 9 years old the first time I realized my place in the family pecking order wasn't somewhere near the bottom, it was the bottom. And the truth is, I never fought back. Not then. Not when it counted. And maybe that's the part that still stings the most. When Michael turned 10, he got a brand new mountain bike with silver rims and a red racing stripe. It had his initials monogrammed on the seat, like some kind of royalty. The day after his birthday, Dad walked into the garage with the older one, the bike Michael had outgrown, and handed it to me with a big grin, like he was giving me treasure. They tied pink ribbons to the handlebars to make it girly, never mind that the frame was too tall and the brakes stuck. But I smiled and said thank you because that's what you do when you're the one who's easier to forget. It never changed. Birthdays, Christmas, graduations, family dinners, Michael got center stage, while I got good manners and silence. I was the kid who got clothes a size up so they last, while Michael got whatever was new, whatever was flashy, whatever was trending on the damn Nickelodeon commercials. And the wild thing is, it wasn't like they hated me. They just didn't see me. Not as anything that could shine on its own. More like background lighting to his show. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 15 and had just won a debate tournament. State level. Big deal. We walked in the door, me carrying the trophy in both hands like it was a new puppy, and Mom rushed past me, didn't even look down. Michael, you finally got your driver's permit, she screamed, hugging him while he shrugged and muttered something about parallel parking. The trophy ended up under my coat on the kitchen counter. Nobody even noticed it. When Michael dropped out of college after 2 semesters because he was too smart for the system, my dad gave him $50,000 to launch a startup. I remember sitting at that same dinner table and asking if he might be able to help cover my textbooks that semester, just $200. Dad didn't even look up from his food. Maybe if you studied something with a return on investment, he said, then changed the subject to Michael's new business cards. I was studying sociology, by the way, because I wanted to help people, not pitch apps. Through college, I worked 5 jobs a week just to survive. That's like, 80 hours a day? And yet somehow I still graduated early with honors, while Michael was on his second failed app and living in a loft paid for by my parents. But even then, I didn't speak up. I didn't push back. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I worked harder, stayed quieter, did better, they'd see me. They'd want to see me. That never happened. What did happen is I learned how to survive without applause, how to succeed without validation. I learned to find power in the background, to make moves where no one was watching. And eventually, I stopped waiting for them to notice. That's when everything started to shift. When I landed my first major real estate deal, 7 figures in one transaction, I didn't even bother to tell my family. I just paid off my student loans, bought myself a leather armchair I had drooled over in the showroom for 2 years, and toasted myself with grocery store Prosecco. Tina asked if I wanted to post it on social media, maybe send a signal that I was doing fine. But I told her no. I didn't want them to know I was okay. I wanted them to forget they thought I wouldn't be. Fast forward to last week. I'm in the office, sitting across from Tina, both of us knee-deep in zoning documents and contractor contracts, when she glances at her phone and just freezes. She tilts the screen toward me and says nothing at first. Just lets the post speak for itself. Samantha, Michael's perfect plastic princess of a wife, had posted a shiny pre-honeymoon selfie, pouty lips and all, captioned, "Leaving for Italy tomorrow. Just wish we had a sponsor for Bora Bora instead. First class isn't cheap when someone's cut you off, LOL." Tagging the universe and maybe Rachel Whitmore too, my name was tagged. Of course it was. Not a request, not even a message, just a jab, a joke, a performance. Tina blinked slowly and said, "You gonna let her do that?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the post a little longer than I should have, took a deep breath, and finally said, not forever. And that was the first time I felt it, the shift in my gut, the one that said, this isn't about proving anything anymore. This is about answering the question they never let me ask. What happens when the broke one stops pretending she cares what they think? Because maybe I never fought back before, but that was because I didn't know I could. Now I know. And they're not ready. Not even close. The moment I saw the itinerary Samantha posted, first class to Italy, 5 nights in Florence, 3 in Venice, and then an off-grid coastal escape on some discreet private beach, I knew exactly where they were going, because of course I did. That was my lead, my discovery, my favorite hideaway that I'd told my mother about in passing years ago, never realizing how quickly anything I said would trickle through the grapevine into Samantha's curated, envy-fueled lifestyle. They had picked the most exclusive villa on the Amalfi Coast, a place I had never even booked for myself because I wanted it to stay unspoiled in my mind, something untouched by their filters and fakery. And yet there they were, honeymooning on my memory, sipping limoncello in linen shirts like royalty, while I sat thousands of miles away pretending I didn't care. But I did care. Just not in the way they'd hoped. I didn't want their approval. I didn't even want an apology. I wanted them to feel something they weren't capable of naming, something between dread and regret, a low ache in the chest when they realized too late that the game had flipped, and I'd been playing with a full hand this entire time. So I started small like all good campaigns do. Quiet. Measured. I didn't need headlines. I needed echoes. First came the property purchase. Tina and I had a shell company set up before sunset, and the villa next door to their love nest was listed off-market within hours, owned by a Swiss developer desperate to unload after a costly divorce. 2.3 million euros. I paid in cash. I never even stepped foot inside. I didn't need to. The only thing I needed was the address and the proximity. From that moment on, I had eyes on them. Not literally, of course. That would be tacky. But symbolically? Oh, I was right there beside them, haunting their honeymoon like a memory they couldn't bury. The champagne started arriving their second morning. A bottle of Dom, wrapped in silver foil with a little card. From the broke one, hope this helps. No name, no address, no phone number. Just those 5 words. Samantha posted it to her story, of course, trying to spin it like a joke, tagging, whoever you are, cheers to the tax write-off. But her eyes were too wide in the photo, her smile stretched a little too tight. She didn't know whether to laugh or worry. That's exactly where I wanted her, dancing on the edge of something she couldn't define. Then came the string quartet. I found them through a contact in Naples, 4 conservatory students desperate for rent, willing to travel and play anything I asked. I paid them double to keep their mouths shut, and every afternoon at precisely 3 o'clock, they set up in the garden between the 2 villas and played an acoustic rendition of Gold Digger. Not once. Not twice. Every damn day. They never faced the couple directly. Never acknowledged them. Just stood beneath the lemon trees and let the notes do the talking. It was petty, sure. But it was poetry. And it was working. By day 4, Samantha was posting less. Michael hadn't tagged her in anything for 2 days. My inbox, usually quiet outside business hours, started pinging around midnight. At first, it was just random family group messages. Mom asking if I was still planning to help out with the estate taxes. Dad forwarding an article about boomerang children with a snide little "thought this was interesting." I didn't respond to any of them. Silence was my new language, and I was becoming fluent. But then, late Friday night, my phone lit up with a contact I hadn't heard from in 6 months, Michael. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring 3 times, then picked up, keeping my voice flat and unbothered. "Hey," he said, tone light, too casual. "Hey," I replied, letting the silence stretch long enough to make him uncomfortable. "So, weird question," he began, and I could already hear the ask before it formed. "We're kinda dealing with this small hiccup on Samantha's loans. She had some issues with her grad school paperwork, long story, but they're being super aggressive about the balance. It's like 70 grand, but the interest is nuts, and well, we figured since you're doing really well now and she's, family, I didn't say anything for a moment. I wanted to let the weight of what he was asking settle over him like cold air through an open window. I wanted him to feel what it was like to reach out to someone you once labeled disposable and hope they're still soft enough to save you. Finally, I spoke, calm as a stone dropped in still water. Sure, I said. I'll think about it. And then I hung up. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast and loud, but revenge? Real revenge is quiet. It's methodical. It's a whisper campaign in silk gloves and red lipstick. It doesn't scream. It lingers. It follows you. And I was just getting started. There's a certain kind of arrogance in thinking you can plan a spectacle and control every single moving part of it, every flash of a camera, every poured glass of wine, every tight-lipped compliment passed between brittle women in designer heels and husbands who pretend not to check their watches. That kind of arrogance has lived in my family's bloodstream for generations, passed down like heirlooms we never asked for, and it was on full display the night of the fundraiser. They called it a charity gala to raise money for entrepreneurial opportunities for underprivileged youth, which was code for a photo op with valet parking and foie gras. It was a chance to show off, to remind the neighbors and the real estate blogs that the Whitmores were still relevant, still powerful, still absolutely, disgustingly full of themselves. I wasn't invited. Not officially. I heard about it from a mutual friend who wasn't supposed to tell me, and that alone told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't an oversight. It was strategic exclusion. A curated guest list designed to keep the family image clean and symmetrical, no broke ones to upset the aesthetic. But this time, I wasn't going to sit back and let them crop me out of the frame. Not again. Not after Italy. Not after Michael's call. Not after that hollow, condescending request for help wrapped in brotherly familiarity. I called Tina, told her to clear my Saturday night, and texted a stylist with a photo I'd been saving in a folder labeled Someday. It was Samantha, posing at her engagement shoot in a champagne-colored gown that hugged her like desperation. I had that same dress made in black silk, tailored sharper, meaner, more elegant. The kind of dress that says, I don't care if you notice me, but you will. When I walked into the estate that night, late enough to turn heads, but early enough to be unavoidable, it was like someone had released a quiet bomb. You know that moment when music is playing, glasses are clinking, people are half drunk on charm and money, and then someone walks in who wasn't part of the plan? That's what I gave them. That kind of silence. Attention you could cut with a butter knife and still leave jagged edges. Samantha was standing near the fireplace, frozen mid-laugh with one of her polished friends, and when she turned and saw me, the glass in her hand tipped ever so slightly, spilling onto her pale blue dress. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just walked straight to the auction table and signed my name on the donation ledger like I'd been doing it for years. $1 million. To a foundation called the Marigold Trust, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women escape emotionally abusive relationships and rebuild their lives independently. I'd vetted them for months. Their work was legitimate, their mission brutal and necessary, and my donation would change dozens of lives. But what made the air go cold in the room wasn't the check. It was the line underneath my signature, donated in loving honor of Michael and Samantha Whitmore, because healing should always come first. There were a few polite chuckles, the kind people give when they're not sure if they're allowed to laugh, and then came the real sound, chairs scraping, heels clicking, someone coughing a little too loudly in a corner. I locked eyes with Samantha for one full second, and I swear I saw her blink in slow motion as if her brain was still buffering the insult. Her face cracked. Not with rage, not at first. Just disbelief. Then the tears came, not loud or theatrical, just sharp, silent streaks down her cheeks as she turned and disappeared toward the hall, with Michael chasing after her like a man trying to catch a paper boat in a flood. Mom was the first one to break the silence, clutching her pearls like she was about to faint in a Tennessee Williams play. She rushed toward me, not with the fury of a protective mother, but the panic of a socialite who just watched her Pinterest-perfect night implode. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed, low enough that only I could hear, but loud enough for every nearby ear to lean in. "I made a donation," I replied, my voice smooth, calm, like I'd been rehearsing this for years. "To mock them? To make a scene?" she snapped, eyes flicking around the room to gauge the damage. "No," I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "To support a cause I care about. But if it made you uncomfortable, maybe ask yourself why." Then came Dad. He'd always been more restrained than Mom, more interested in optics than emotion, and he approached with the slow, deliberate steps of a man choosing his next words like bullets. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with a disappointed sigh and said, "That was low, Rachel." I stepped closer, close enough that only he would hear me over the suddenly too loud jazz floating through the air. "Still not as low as inviting everyone but me," I whispered. "You raised me to be silent. You don't get to be surprised when I start speaking a language you taught me." Then I turned and left. No dessert. No speeches. No polite air kisses on the cheek. Just 100 eyes watching my back as I walked out the way I came in, uninvited, unexpected, unforgettable. Later that night, after I'd poured myself a drink and kicked off those brutal heels, Tina sent me a screenshot. It was Samantha's latest Instagram story, blurry, moody lighting, a caption over black that read, "Some people will never be family no matter what." No tags. No names. But we both knew who it was for. Tina just texted, "They're coming for you." What now? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Let them. There's something almost comical about how quiet people get when they know they've underestimated you for too long, when the version of you they rehearsed in their minds, the weak one, the broke one, the background character, is suddenly sitting across from them with nothing left to prove and every single card in her hand. That's exactly what I saw on Michael's face when he walked into my office that morning without an appointment, without a warning, and without the usual smugness he wore like a designer cologne. He looked nervous. Not terrified, not shaking, but like a man who suddenly realized the GPS he's been using might have led him straight into a trap, and now he's hoping the driver has mercy. Samantha came in first, her perfume announcing her by about 5 seconds. She smiled, tight, strained, artificial, and I could already tell she'd rehearsed whatever speech she thought would work. Michael followed behind her, holding a manila folder like it might protect him from something sharp. Tina raised an eyebrow from her desk, ready to call security with a single look from me, but I shook my head slightly and told her to give us a minute. We moved into the conference room. I didn't offer them coffee. I didn't even sit first. "We didn't mean to just drop in," Samantha began, clasping her hands like a nervous bridesmaid at a wedding gone wrong. "But we thought it might be good to talk face to face. You know, clear the air." Michael added quickly, "Yeah, it's been a weird couple of months. A lot of tension. But we figured we're family, right?" It wasn't a question. But he said it like he needed me to agree before he could keep breathing. Samantha glanced at him, then back at me, and I could see the real reason forming behind her teeth like plaque. "We also wanted to talk about an opportunity," she said, too casually, like she was selling Girl Scout cookies instead of trying to weasel back into my wallet. "Michael's startup is about to go live. It's huge, like next-level traction. And we were thinking, maybe there's a way you could be involved? Maybe you'd want a piece of the launch if you wanted to help out with the honeymoon setback." There it was, wrapped in suggestion and sweetened with fake equity, but at the end of the day, still the same ask. Money. My money. The broke one's money. The kind they now realized could buy more than bottles of champagne or orchestras with petty playlists. It could buy power, leverage, ownership. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I leaned back in my chair, opened the drawer behind me, and pulled out a folder of my own. Slim. Neat. Efficient. The kind of folder people don't expect you to have unless they already know they've misjudged the hell out of you. I laid it on the table. No flourish. No grand reveal. Just flipped it open and slid it toward Michael like it was a restaurant menu. He hesitated, then started flipping through the pages, first a set of stock purchase agreements, then some internal company memos, then a few emails between his co-founders and a consulting firm they never knew was tied back to me. Shell companies. Silent partnerships. Proxy votes. You own. Michael started, his voice cracking slightly. 30%. I finished for him, tapping one of the documents with my index finger. Acquired over the last 6 months. Quietly. Strategically. Legally. Samantha looked like she'd been slapped across the face with a tax return. Why would you do that? I looked at her for a long second before answering. Because I could. Michael was pale now, his fingers frozen on the edge of the page. You don't want to hurt the company, do you? No, I said, leaning forward slowly. I want you to understand that you never had the upper hand. You never even saw the board. He tried to speak again, some half-formed apology or justification, but I cut him off with a smile that felt more like a knife than a comfort. You didn't want my pity gifts, I said, calm and sharp. So this time, I'm giving you something better. Silence. They didn't respond. They just stared at me, blinking slowly, the way people do when they realize they've been walking into a room with the lights off, thinking they knew the furniture layout, only to trip over the truth. I stood, motioned to the door, and walked out without another word. Tina was waiting in the hallway, pretending to scroll through emails, but I knew she'd heard everything. Her mouth twitched in a barely concealed grin as she held the elevator door for me. That night, I poured myself one drink, just one, and walked out onto the balcony of my penthouse overlooking the city that had once felt too big, too expensive, too far from the family that made me feel so small. Now it looked like mine. Every rooftop, every blinking light, every inch of it. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Tina. You're gonna tell them, right? I stared at the screen for a while, the wind tugging gently at my hair, the ice melting in my glass. Then, slowly, I opened the thread. And I deleted it. No reply. No explanation. Because some victories don't need announcements. Some truths don't need witnesses. And some revenge is better served not just cold, but clean. The funny part? They'll never know if I did it all for spite or if I did it because I genuinely believed I deserved to win. Maybe it was both. And maybe that's the price of being right.